Silence has always been more powerful than noise. Before people learned how to argue loudly, wise men learned how to think clearly. Long before debates became competitions of ego, there existed a method that quietly exposed falsehood without aggression. This method did not rely on dominance or emotion. It relied on clarity. The man who perfected it walked barefoot through Athens and left behind a legacy that still shapes the strongest minds today. His name was Socrates, and his influence quietly lives inside Stoic philosophy. Most people believe arguments are won by proving others wrong. The Stoics believed something far more dangerous to falsehood. They believed that truth does not need force. It only needs exposure. When clarity enters a conversation, confusion retreats on its own. This is why Socrates rarely told people they were wrong. He allowed them to arrive at that realization themselves. And once the mind sees its own contradiction, it cannot unsee it. The Stoics adopted this way of thinking because they understood something essential about human nature. People are not disturbed by reality. They are disturbed by their judgments about reality. Every argument, every conflict, every emotional reaction begins with an unexamined belief. The moment that belief is examined calmly, its power begins to fade. Most arguments today are built on unclear language. Words are used without shared meaning. Concepts are thrown around like weapons, even though no one agrees on what those concepts truly represent. When clarity enters, chaos weakens. A calm mind notices this instantly. Precision becomes a form of control. Not control over others, but control over reality itself. Socrates understood that if an idea could not be clearly expressed, it could not be clearly defended. The Stoics echoed this belief centuries later. They taught that confusion is a sign of inner disorder. A disciplined mind seeks definition, not victory. When someone speaks with certainty but lacks clarity, they reveal weakness without realizing it. And when clarity is demanded, false confidence begins to crumble. Beliefs often masquerade as facts. Repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity creates the illusion of truth. The Stoics warned against this mental trap. They taught that impressions arrive uninvited, but assent is a choice. Just because an idea feels common does not mean it is correct. Just because many people repeat it does not give it strength. A calm examination strips ideas of their emotional armor. When an argument is held up to reason rather than reaction, its foundation becomes visible. Many ideas collapse at this stage, not because they are attacked, but because they were never solid to begin with. This is where mental discipline separates the philosopher from the crowd. Assumptions operate silently. They hide beneath words and guide conclusions without ever being acknowledged. The Stoics trained themselves to detect these hidden drivers. Once exposed, assumptions lose their authority. They can no longer manipulate emotion or dictate behavior. The mind becomes free the moment it recognizes what it had unconsciously accepted. Human beings love certainty. Absolute statements feel safe. They remove complexity and replace it with comfort. But reality does not function in absolutes. The Stoics understood that nature is fluid, contextual, and nuanced. Any idea that claims total dominance over reality eventually collides with an exception. And one exception is enough to fracture certainty. Logic does not need aggression. It only needs consistency. When an idea is followed to its natural conclusion, it reveals its true nature. If it leads to stability, harmony, and coherence, it aligns with truth. If it leads to contradiction, chaos, or absurdity, it exposes itself as flawed. The Stoics measured ideas by their outcomes, not their popularity. This approach does something powerful to the mind. It removes the need to win. When ego steps aside, clarity steps forward. The Stoic does not argue to dominate another person. He examines ideas to refine himself. This inner orientation makes him immune to provocation. No insult can destabilize a mind that is anchored in reason. True strength is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not rush to respond. It listens carefully, observes patiently, and speaks only when necessary. This restraint is not weakness. It is mastery. The Stoics believed that self-command was the highest form of power. A person who cannot control his reactions is easily controlled by others. When clarity becomes a habit, arguments lose their emotional charge. Conversations transform from battles into explorations. The mind stops seeking victory and starts seeking understanding. This shift changes everything. Relationships improve. Decisions sharpen. Inner peace deepens. Socrates never claimed to be wise. He claimed to love wisdom. This humility protected him from dogma. The Stoics adopted the same posture. They remained students of reality, not prisoners of belief. This openness kept their minds flexible and resilient, capable of growth rather than collapse. The world today desperately needs this mindset. Noise dominates discourse. Emotion replaces reason. Identity replaces truth. In such an environment, the calm thinker becomes rare and therefore powerful. When you refuse to be pulled into emotional chaos, you gain an advantage few possess. This is not about defeating others. It is about defeating confusion. It is about freeing the mind from unexamined beliefs that quietly dictate behavior. When clarity becomes your default state, you no longer fear disagreement. You welcome it as an opportunity to refine truth. This is where wisdom begins, not with answers but with examination, not with certainty but with discipline, not with dominance but with calm authority. The Stoics understood this deeply, and that understanding made them unshakable. Disciplined mind does not react instantly. It pauses. In that pause lies freedom. The Stoics trained themselves to create space between stimulus and response. In that space, reason takes control. When emotions rush forward unchecked, clarity disappears. But when the mind remains still, truth rises naturally. Most conflicts escalate because people feel threatened. Their identity becomes attached to their ideas. Any challenge feels personal. The Stoic avoids this trap by separating self-worth from belief. Ideas are tools, not extensions of the ego. Tools can be examined, refined, or discarded without emotional injury. When a belief is examined calmly, it either strengthens or dissolves. Both outcomes are beneficial. Strengthened beliefs become more precise. Dissolved beliefs free mental energy that was once trapped in illusion. This process is not destructive. It is liberating. The greatest danger is not being wrong. The greatest danger is believing you are right without examination. The Stoics feared false certainty more than ignorance. Ignorance can be corrected. False certainty resists correction. It hardens the mind and blocks growth. Calm reasoning has a contagious effect. When one person remains grounded, emotional escalation loses momentum. Arguments cool naturally. This is not manipulation. It is alignment with reality. Truth does not shout. It does not need to. It stands quietly and waits. A mind trained in this discipline becomes resilient. Insults lose their sting. Provocation fails to trigger reaction. Chaos passes through without leaving damage. This inner stability becomes visible to others. Respect follows naturally, not because it is demanded but because it is earned. The Stoics believed that every external conflict mirrors an internal one. When the mind is disordered, the world feels hostile. When the mind is ordered, the world becomes manageable. This is why philosophy was not an academic exercise for them. It was survival training. Reason sharpens judgment. Judgment shapes action. Action determines destiny. This chain begins with how we examine ideas. When examination becomes habitual, life becomes intentional. You stop being pushed by opinions and start moving by principles. Most people exhaust themselves trying to convince others. The Stoic conserves energy. He understands that reality does not require persuasion. Truth remains true regardless of acceptance. This realization removes desperation from dialogue. Calm replaces urgency. When you stop needing validation, you gain authority. When you stop chasing agreement, you gain clarity. When you stop reacting emotionally, you gain control. This transformation does not happen overnight. It is built through disciplined reflection and consistent practice. The Stoics did not seek to escape the world. They sought to engage it wisely. They participated fully, but without attachment to outcomes. This detachment allowed them to remain steady in both success and failure. Their strength came from alignment with reason, not circumstance. In a world addicted to outrage, calm becomes revolutionary. When you refuse to be dragged into emotional noise, you disrupt its power. People notice silence becomes louder than shouting. Presence becomes more persuasive than argument. The ultimate purpose of this method is not intellectual victory. It is inner freedom. When your mind is no longer enslaved by unexamined beliefs, you become sovereign over yourself. No one can manipulate what they cannot control emotionally. This is why Stoic philosophy endures. It addresses the core of human struggle. It teaches mastery of perception, discipline of thought, and harmony with reality. When these principles guide examination, wisdom becomes practical, not abstract. The calm thinker becomes a stabilizing force. In families, in workplaces, in society. Where others react, he reflects. Where others escalate, he clarifies. This quiet influence reshapes environments without confrontation. The strongest minds do not seek to destroy others. They seek to remove illusion. When illusion fades, conflict dissolves naturally. What remains is understanding. And understanding is the foundation of peace. This approach transforms how you move through life. Conversations become opportunities rather than threats. Disagreement becomes exploration rather than combat. The mind stays open, flexible, and sharp. In the end, the greatest victory is not winning an argument. It is mastering yourself. When your thoughts are disciplined, your emotions balanced, and your judgments aligned with reason, nothing external can destabilize you. This is the legacy of Socrates refined by the Stoics. A legacy of clarity over chaos, discipline over impulse, wisdom over noise. When you embody this mindset, you do not need to dominate conversations. Your calm presence does the work for you.